Seeing a celebrity fall from grace is a special kind of tragedy. Most empathetic people find it disappointing, saddening even, whereas gay psychopaths such as myself find entertainment in it, beauty even. I guess it really depends on what kind of fall it is and whether or not they're able to pick themselves back up. The idea of a fall from grace is subjective, but a recent example of this is objectively really funny. Gina Carano, who went from starring in a universally acclaimed, Emmy-nominated Star Wars spin-off series and punching Colossus in the dick, now finds herself starring in films for people who think liberal tears coffee mugs are a substitute for personality. Following her expulsion from Disney, Miss Thing found herself in a bit of a pickle. Unlike James Gunn, who had the support of other celebrities following his expulsion from Disney, Miss Carano found herself a bit more alone in this struggle at first. As I've mentioned in my other videos about conservatives making movies, the Daily Wire has become a sort of safe haven for problematic celebrities who have been shunned by Hollywood. And just like Vincent Gallo and Dallas Sonnier, Miss Carano found a new home and, a new safe space where they too believed that being a conservative in 2023 is exactly like being a Jew during the Holocaust. And what do you get when you combine a celebrity fallen from grace, a failed screenwriter turned propagandist turned wannabe producer, and $75 million? You get a little film called Terror on the Prairie.
The Lord takes too damn long!
Greetings, my good bitches. The name's Francis, Coke Francis. I'm an editor, comedy writer, drag artist, and I'm here because this hobby distracts me from the anxieties of working in a gig economy. Welcome to another episode of Apparently the Daily Wire Makes Movies Now, Part 3. Now, I did get a few requests to review the movie My Son Hunter, because apparently Breitbart makes movies now too, but Nick DeRamio already made a fantastic, super in-depth review of it, which you should absolutely go and watch right now instead of this filth. I can definitely see why you guys requested it, between Ron DeSantis and drag here and making Democrats look way cooler than they actually are. But here's the thing. That movie was created solely to evoke a reaction from the left and to provide quality masturbation material for people whose entire personality is wanting an ex-president to penetrate them. No matter how sarcastic or witty or whatever my review of it may be, making a video about it and posting it publicly on the internet is exactly what they want. That being said, please go watch Nick DeRamio's video on it. That movie, to me, was Gina Carano's announcement to the world that she couldn't care less about what the mainstream media thinks. She's blazing her own path. She doesn't need the help of those pesky Hollywood liberals. To her, it's go woke, go broke. And that brings us to Terror on the Prairie, a 2022 Western directed by Michael Polish, who, like DJ Caruso with Shut In, is actually a pretty competent director. It's a Western that billed itself, as the Daily Wire does with all its content, as what you want minus the agenda, despite the fact that all content they produce is made with the intention of proving how anti-woke they are, and not, being actually entertaining. But as they say, it's go woke, go broke. They certainly couldn't be broke if they put $75 million behind this movie. The masses are clearly catching on that mainstream Hollywood films are nothing but liberal propaganda. Now that Hollywood is woke and broke, the money will go to small mom-and-pop corporations like the Daily Wire instead. And boy, did they prove it when Terror on the Prairie took the world by storm, grossing a grand total of $804. Wait, no, that can't possibly be. Did they all just forget to add a bunch of zeros? Or no, it's just $804. That is the actual amount of money that Terror on the Prairie grossed against a budget of $75 million. The Daily Wire produced this film and lost $74,999,000 $196. When they said go woke, go broke, were they referring to themselves? Granted, aside from the film's exclusive release on Daily Wire Plus, it was only released theatrically in a handful of theaters in Russia and the United Arab Emirates. This is a genuine question, one that I'm hoping you can help me answer. Are these people capable of doing anything that isn't one gigantic self-own?
Whores in this house? There's some whores in this house?
That being said, with a whopping 6 critic reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, the film does hold an 83%. As for audience reviews, I've seen mixed opinions, and accordingly, I'll be going into this with as open of a mind as possible. Maybe, just maybe, Terror on the Prairie is an underrated gem and future classic western. We're gonna find out together, today, right now. But before we do, if you're a fan of watching a very tired drag queen talk about nerd shit forever, I ask that you please grab every gun in your home and open fire on a bunch of rootin' tootin' outlaws surrounding your house. Then go outside and pretend to surrender, but instead unzip your pants and dick slap them and those like and subscribe buttons as hard as you can. So Terror on the Prairie was shot entirely in Montana, which is objectively the prettiest state in this godforsaken nation. Something you may notice about this movie is that the cinematography is actually pretty solid. Then again, you could shoot your movie on a potato in Montana and it would still look good. Unfortunately, the real reason they shot in Montana wasn't an aesthetic choice necessarily, it was to avoid COVID laws that were enforced in other states at the time. Miss Carano stated herself, "To hell with it, I'll quit my union, let's make a movie up in Montana where they can't get after us." We open with this group of outlaws chasing a dude down with pacing that could really only be compared to that scene in Monty Python and the Holy Grail where Lancelot is charging at the castle for like 7 minutes. And then we meet our rootin' tootin' scalpin' outlaws who are played by a whole gang of interesting folks. The main villain here is only known as the Captain, played by Nick Searcy, who has by far the most amount of riz in this film. See, in order to get onto the Daily Wire guest list, you either have to be a terrible person or at the very least just a Twitter troll, like Mr. Searcy here. Though he is also anti-Trump, which, shh, it's okay, Nick. I promise I won't say a word about this to the Wire ever. He also said, "I know people have feelings, that's why I try to hurt them." And like, kinda same? Oh my god, did we just become best friends? We meet another outlaw only known as Longhair, played by Tyler Fisher, a New York-based actor and alleged comedian who went on Dr. Phil to complain about how he was discriminated against for being white. We also meet the Kid, played by Gabriel Kane Day-Lewis, as in, yes, the spawn of Daniel Day-Lewis. Despite his very famous dad, Gabriel Kane, Francis Ford Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula Day-Lewis, is not a nepo baby and actually had to work very hard to get to where he is now, which is my age. He's also a self-taught musician who puts all of his stuff up on YouTube, except for one unpublished track produced by a hot young up-and-comer named J. Cole. But Francis, why didn't he publish it? Great question. Apparently, at one point he says, "For those that know my dad, he's in films, right? So my life has been more exposed than yours has. I know what fame is. Judging someone for their dad is just as bad as being racist." Anyway, the final outlaw is only known as Gold Teeth, played by Heath Freeman. He actually passed away from a combined drug intoxication just a week after this movie finished filming, and I couldn't really find too much information on the guy, so I'm just gonna leave him out of this out of respect.
Respect for the dead!
Okay, sorry, that was not cool at all. They also include a tribute to him in the credits, and drug overdosing is such a horrible way to go, and I don't have the strength to joke about this right now. I'm a terrible person.
If manners maketh man, I have surrounded myself with boys.
What is a man? I'm surprised they're actually showing Christians as the bad guys here. This is a pretty effective opening. If I actually like this movie, I'm going to kill myself. So now we're introduced to the McAllister family and... Oh Christ, is there gonna be a baby crying this entire time? Playing the completely fucking useless husband here is Donald Cerrone, former MMA fighter and staunch anti-whatever is good for your healther, refusing to wear masks at the height of a global pandemic because he doesn't stand for that shit and is a true gritted, hardcore American Republican. He also took a stand against widely despised comedian Brendan Schaub, who, in a rare moment of mental clarity, actually used female pronouns to describe a trans woman. But Cerrone insisted that if you have a dick, you're a dude. He really does talk big game for someone sponsored by the t-shirt company that trademarked iron crosses. And now we meet our primary star, Miss Gina Carano herself, playing Hattie McAllister. And look, I know she's kind of a bitch, but I would feel so safe in her arms. She's a very handsome woman. I mean, just look at that physique. What do they farm? Protein powder? Anyway, Hattie is from the big city in Missouri and is deeply unsatisfied with her life on, well, the prairie. But her husband Jeb is insistent that they pull themselves up by their bootstraps and live off the land. It's funny because this is the lifestyle Republicans want women to have everywhere, and then any and every opportunity for Hattie to gain some kind of control over her life is immediately taken away by her idiot husband. I mean, yeah, of course rattlesnakes would never actually show up in the dead of winter in Montana, but let her have something. She's like genuinely mad that she didn't get to blow this snake to bits.
Still a sharpshooter, boy. Don't you ever forget it.
I didn't raise no sissy. We farm protein powder, not soybeans.
Deep down, you're the toughest woman in this territory.
Deep down? Look at her! She could break that entire group of bandits over one knee barehanded. Oh, are they gonna bang? They're gonna bang? No! Damn you, Daily Wire! Oh yeah, and a bunch of Native Americans show up and ask her to give this girl stitches, which, let's be honest, stitches are not going to fix that kind of wound. Just throw the whole leg away. I'm not sure why they came to Hattie for help. We never see them again. They never say anything. I guess they just assumed that she could, but why? I don't know. This scene is completely pointless other than throwing in another gore scene to show how #edgy they are. They did this in Shut In too, but they're admittedly doing a slightly better job of it here.
We live in a shack, Jed. We've got old tools, worn out livestock, and can only feed our children with food borrowed off store credit.
Well, honey, we have enough money to feed the family, but you have to consume 5,000 calories a day to maintain muscle mass. So Jeb goes into the city to look for money. I don't know how things worked back then. And after he leaves, Hattie tells her son that his dad was originally a Confederate soldier in the Civil War, but later defected to the Union. Or, as she puts it,
things weren't simple back then.
Now, Jeb very well could have been amongst those in the Confederacy who saw the war as a land issue rather than a slavery issue, but later on it became super fucking obvious that it was a slavery issue and he defected to the Union. Or maybe the Phantom Thieves made him have a change of heart. I don't fucking know. However, Hattie doesn't provide any other context as to why old dad was a Confederate soldier other than it's complicated. Well, they did say this movie wouldn't have an agenda. I almost wish it did. So that group of outlaws from earlier shows up at the McAllister house, and Captain Riz asks Hattie if she could provide them with food and water in his best Foghorn Leghorn impersonation. And she obliges them? Good God, I've seen this porn before.
Well, then, I guess that makes you the man of the house, I reckon.
I thought for a second he was talking about Gina. Dude, I hate babies, but I wouldn't let any of these guys within 100 feet of a baby, let alone give them one of my own to hold. Captain Riz starts singing a song about Dixie and how cool he thought it was, so I think we can safely assume what side of the war these knuckleheads were on. Also, this guy is so damn tall. I just want to see him bang his head on those pots and pans once. Just once. So Hattie goes outside and sees some freshly dried scalps tied to their saddles and knows immediately that these boys ain't right. And now that her useless husband is out of the house, she can finally be the 2A queen she was always meant to be. She's like, my pronouns are yeehaw. To be fair though, this is actually the exact correct context in which it's super necessary to own a gun. Like, specifically for this situation at this period in time. Well, Captain Riz didn't raise a bunch of quitters, so after they leave the house, a whole standoff emerges and... oh fuck, that baby is gonna be crying the entire time. And they're using stock baby crying sound effects. I should know, I heard that one in Arthur? Apparently everyone here owns a gun, but none of them know how to use them because shots are fired for several minutes and nobody gets hit. This good old-fashioned Wild West shootout might be cool if there wasn't a fucking baby crying this entire time. Unfortunately, the older kid gets shot and not the... you know, look, I'm not for killing babies, never have been, never will, but if killing this baby meant I wouldn't have to hear it cry for the rest of the movie, plus the kid who did get shot, he's fine. Like, completely, totally fine. These are Prairie kids. A gunshot might knock the baby on her ass for a few days, but she'll be up and getting married before you know it. Missouri, those flimsy pieces of wood, that'll stop them. If not for those mountains, you could not convince me that this isn't the ghost town at Knott's Berry Farm. So Captain Riz tries to riz his way back in, but this is a McAllister household, and if Home Alone has taught me anything, it's that robbers and criminals best not fuck around with a McAllister, lest they step in a bear trap or something. Hattie has guns, but imagine the damage she could do with some paint cans on a string. This movie is basically Home Alone meets the Oregon Trail. Okay, who scalps a cow, honestly? So since they can't leave the house, Hattie sets it on fire to send smoke signals, which will definitely work, and surely in the middle of bumfuck nowhere, someone will not only see it, but also take on this band of 4 bandits with guns, all just in time for this family's lungs to not explode. Well, that actually does happen with a divine act of cowboy ex machina. Oh, no he ain't! And Captain Riz skips the scalping and goes straight to Sweeney Todding this guy. This scream during the scene is the first time we see her actually acting in this movie. So instead of job hunting or doing any of the shit that he was supposed to do, Jeb fucked off to a saloon and is now wasting all the money that they did have. Is Hattie actually bummed about living in Montana, or just that she has to be there with this idiot? He's confronted by a saloon hooker, played by Samara Armstrong, who ran for and lost a mayoral election in Arizona. Oh, and she casually told the whole internet that Black Lives Matter is a billion-dollar terrorist organization. We can see exactly why she was adopted into the Daily Wire safe space. So with that, I've discovered the one uniting factor amongst the Daily Wire island of misfit toys that we see here. In the year 2020, they were all stoked to be shooting in Montana. Up until this point, this movie had actually been doing a pretty good job with using historically accurate costumes. Until now. Because, bitch, we all know you got that corset from Lake Avenue.
Be gone, son!
There's only 2 women with actual lines in this conservative frontier fanfic. One is a mother, the other is a whore. Make of that what you will. So the guy played by Gabriel Kane Day-Lewis, based on the novel Push by Sapphire, says that he just wants to talk. And I've seen enough Chappelle stand-up to know that he definitely doesn't. I guess Hattie has too, because when he offers to sneak them out, she kablamos him right in the heart. And that's when it hits her. These outlaws are looking for her dumbass husband and are using her and the kids as bait. Seems like they underestimated how much he sucks, because they've been out here for a minute. Even though she's supposedly trying to protect her kids, she also makes her child go right out in front of the line of fire. You know, like a real Republican. So let's say that the baby got shot by accident. It would be very sad. Of course, it would be very sad. But in like 7 minutes, I'd get over it. Here's the first attempted rape and eventual stabbing scene we see. There's another one later, we'll get to that. But my face during both of those scenes. You know that scene in The Boys where Butcher and Homelander momentarily bond over protecting Ryan and they give each other that look? That was my face right here. It's the look of resentful approval. And here's another super weirdly paced chase scene, kind of like the one at the beginning. And it's different. Very different than other super exciting chase sequences you see in other movies. Everybody's so creative.
Well, the Lord takes too damn long.
Fair. Jeb makes quite the entrance here. And it turns out the reason Captain Riz is after Jeb is because Jeb accidentally killed his daughter during the war and now he's out for blood. And look, I would be too, without a doubt. But while I can empathize with this guy, I can't say I can sympathize with a Confederate soldier who quotes Bible verses while collecting scalps like they're infinity stones. See? We're hearing from both sides. They kicked him so hard in the dick, does that make him a woman now? So now these Confederates are doing what they do best by setting up a little lynching for Jeb and making Hattie watch. But again, for some reason she really loves this dude and she's willing to do anything to save him, even, oh god, I hate where this is going so much. Hattie falling on the bed with exactly the right amount of upper thigh exposed can only mean one thing. More rape revenge stabbing. And more of me making this face. Poor Jeb too. Imagine getting cucked by a guy with gold teeth. I'm actually pretty surprised with how far they took this scene, especially considering that they definitely got COVID after this. Man, I wonder how Captain Riz is gonna go out in the finale. Oh, okay, work. I know Hattie is the protagonist in this movie, so normally it would make sense for her to take him down, but all that talk of Jeb being a sharpshooter, one of the few redeeming qualities about him, never actually paid off. He didn't aim once, and he was the one Captain Riz was after, so whatever. This is the third Daily Wire movie I've reviewed for this channel. The first one was Shut In, which was super bad and easy to make fun of, but it was also far from the worst movie I've ever seen. The second one was Run, Hide, Fight, a movie so terrible it made me feel as though I had never seen a good movie in my entire life. And that brings us to Terror on the Prairie, which is the least bad out of the three. Given my experiences with the other two Daily Wire films, I was expecting way worse. This movie is mediocre with a couple bright spots throughout, but ultimately I don't feel like I wasted 2 hours of my life. Does this count as me liking it? If I actually like this movie, I'm going to kill myself. I'm not sure. My desire to not kill myself is a lot stronger than any fondness I might have towards this movie. I don't really have a whole lot to say about it, actually, but I am curious as to what exactly the Daily Wire was thinking when it came to actually distributing this film. As I mentioned earlier, Terror on the Prairie, along with everything else The Wire produces, bills itself as what you want minus the agenda. This was the first instance in which they actually kept that promise, even with the Civil War backstory. I almost wish it did have an agenda, so there would actually be something really worth roasting here. But credit where credit is due, and yet they marketed and distributed this movie as if it did have an agenda. Underwhelming as it is, this is still a film that holds up to others like it production value-wise. If they wanted a more widespread distribution, they probably would have been able to get it. It seems like the Daily Wire just assumed that they would be turned down by mainstream distributors based on the reputation alone, which says a lot more about The Wire than anything else. They constantly complain about being silenced and being persecuted for their views, which is why Miss Carano fit in perfectly after Disney dropped her like Matt Walsh's head was as a baby. They regularly push their agenda on anyone, anywhere, anytime. Nobody has stopped them, even sometimes when maybe they should have been. And then, for once, they produce a perfectly fine apolitical Western with good production values and only release it to people dumb enough to pay for a Daily Wire Plus subscription, the only places it was released theatrically were a few select theaters in Russia and the United Arab Emirates. Are those really the only places in the world it could nab a theatrical release in? And as a result, this movie made $804. $75 million to make. 804 made. So if this film really didn't push a conservative agenda, why were they too scared and or unable to present it to a larger audience? Or are they just that hated and won't admit it? Aside from the possible assumptions based on reputation, which is another great addition to the ever-growing list of Daily Wire self-owns, the only other aspect of this movie that they might have feared would prevent it from success is its star itself. Gina Carano's fall from grace happened in a matter of hours. No longer did the world see her as the strong female character in the worldwide phenomenon that was The Mandalorian. A couple tweets later, she was nothing more than the poster child for the average conservative white woman. She just spoke her truth, that wearing a piece of cloth on your face is exactly like being herded into a cattle car, tortured, and then exterminated for your very existence. The Daily Wire just did what they always do as the charitable bunch that they are, keeping her career afloat in the great echo chamber sea. So did they not realize that she was a liability until it was too late? Or did they genuinely not care that they would lose almost $75 million in an attempt to save a former MMA fighter's acting career? And if it was the latter, is it because they actually cared about Gina? Or just to send a meaningless message to the rest of Hollywood? You know, virtue signaling. But even with her celebrity fall from grace, she could have ended up in a much worse movie. I mean, she did. She actually did. I'm sure there will be many more. But if one were to prove her nosedive, Terror on the Prairie certainly wouldn't be the movie to do that. As long as you don't mention the fact that it only made, you know, $804. If it's true that Terror on the Prairie was turned down by mainstream distributors simply because of the names attached, it's clear that the Daily Wire has so much baggage that even with a mediocre film like this one, there's still so much of it to unpack here. But isn't that kind of a beautiful thing? If this film was produced by anyone else and made more than $804, I probably wouldn't have anything to say about it. But it's everything surrounding this mediocre film that makes for good content on my end. As long as the Daily Wire keeps making movies, no matter how good or bad or ugly, I will always have topics for videos. There is so much fucked up shit going on there that there will always be at least one little nugget of problematic goodness that I can capitalize off of. They will always have something shitty attached to their name and work, because that's who they are. So please, Daily Wire, I know I'm just some drag queen on the internet. I know you're not very fond of my kind, but I'm with your fans on this one. Please, never stop making movies. Well, fictitious movies, anyway. I can't really call What is a Woman a documentary because Matt Walsh made an entire movie trying to figure out what a woman is and still doesn't know. But it's definitely not something that was produced with the actual intention of entertaining an audience. I guess it's somewhere in between. Is sad rantings of a closeted pedophile a legitimate genre? Nobody knows for sure. But you know what is a legitimate genre? The winning comment from my last video. Cha-cha real smooth. Zombie Chaos says, we're calling the main character Peter Porn from now on, right? It was the first comment we got.
That's amazing.
I've been kicking myself ever since I saw this comment. You too can be featured in the next video. Leave a comment below, and I will pick my favorite one and give you a shout out next time. If you would like to see more of my clown mug elsewhere, please consider following me on Instagram or TikTok. My handle for both is @QueenCokeFrancis. If you'd like to see me bully people like this in 240 characters or less, follow me on Twitter @RealCokeFrancis. And if you'd like to stick it to the Daily Wire even more, please feel free to check out my description box below, where you can find donation links to all the charities and organizations mentioned in my Woke Boogeyman video. If you haven't done this already, I ask that you please grab every gun in your home and open fire on a bunch of rootin' tootin' outlaws surrounding your house. Then go outside and pretend to surrender, but instead unzip your pants and dick slap them and those like and subscribe buttons as hard as you can. And, of course, as always, until next time, my stomach is yelling at me, howdy-ho.